Actually, I'm going to do that kind of indulgent thing where I just kind of take the center of the bread. Mmm. Mmm. It is so good. In a stock pot, you're going to have 1.75 cups of regular cranberry juice cocktail, like the kind that you can buy at a store. The kind I use, like this recipe is kind of old school, so this was developed, I guess before organic things became popular, before sugar-free became popular. So this is just your generic cranberry juice cocktail that you can buy at any supermarket. So you got 1.75 cups of that. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat on. And to this, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of honey. So honey is one of those ingredients that is really, really difficult to sometimes work with when it's cold or room temperature, because it's sticky and it kind of gets everywhere. So the easiest solution to this is, once you kind of pour it from your honey container into a measuring cup, is pop this in the microwave for like 30 to 45 seconds, and it turns into a really, really loose liquid. And you just want to add this to your stock pot, or anything else that you're using honey for, before it starts to cool off again and starts to get a little thicker. So yeah, so 3/4 of a cup. See how easy that is to work with once you put that in a microwave? You can also put this in a stock pot with like some cold, hot water, and let it warm up that way if you don't have a microwave around. If you're out camping, microwaves might not be something that you have readily available. But then again, if you're camping, you're probably not making cranberry sauce from scratch. So yeah, that's my little kitchen hack for this episode. So obviously you're going to stir that around. And that's the other thing, is once this becomes super liquid, because it's been warmed up, it doesn't sit like a glob at the bottom of your saucepan. So it's a lot easier to stir. And then my next kind of flavoring, thickening, sweetening ingredient is a jar of marmalade. Now, I'm picky about my marmalade. I like marmalade with like pieces in it. Like I don't want like just the translucent orange flavored jelly. So I like specifically when I was shopping for this at the supermarket earlier today, I was literally picking this up and going, okay, can I see the pieces? Can I see the pieces in this? And I'm not sponsored by this, but Beaumaman always has orange peel pieces in its marmalade, so I tend to prefer this over the others. But when you see like the little pop-up thing in here, an easy way, if you have a hard time opening it, is to just hit the bottom, like spank it, just, and it will actually make opening this way easier. I don't understand the physics of that. I'm sure that there's a scientist that can, but when it comes to like jarred pasta sauces and jams and things like that, I always tend to kind of spank the bottom a couple times before I turn it over. So an entire jar. So this is 13 ounces. And again, you can pop this in the microwave as well and let this kind of become liquefied, but I've opted not to because I was concentrating on liquefying the honey. So let me go ahead and, ooh, it does come out really easy though, just one big glob. So there's that. And then you can use this jar, just, soak the lid off, and you can put some of this cranberry sauce into it, so you can give it as a gift to a friend gift. You're gonna go ahead and mash this up. And basically the pectins that are in the jam that make the jam thick are also going to make the sauce thick. Now, cranberries by themselves will make this a thicker, like a thickened jelly anyway, but the marmalade really does kind of speed that process along. And if you haven't warmed this up so it's a little bit more liquid before you add it to this cranberry juice and honey mixture, you can use a whisk, but honestly, the more this heats up, the more that marmalade is going to disintegrate and melt into everything else. So, you know, I don't think you necessarily need to use any tool other than a spatula for this recipe. Okay, to this, we're going to add a 12-ounce bag. So when you go to the supermarket, especially around the fall, you'll see a 12-ounce bag and like a larger size bag. And I never think about what size the larger bag is because I always just get a 12-ounce bag. This is rinsed. Just run it under some water in a colander. And you're going to add that to the mixture and give it a stir. And basically you're going to cook this until the cranberries start to pop. So it's going to take a minute, but just be patient. Now you may be wondering, whoa, one of those cranberries just popped. You definitely do not want to have this at a rolling boil because you've got honey in there, marmalade in there, and when it boils over that can get really painful. So you do want to keep this at a low simmer and just keep an eye on the cranberries and make sure that you don't get anything popping. Ooh. And because there's a whole jar of marmalade and a whole bunch of honey, you might think this is like an almost too sweet cranberry sauce. But the reality is, cranberries by themselves aren't sweet. They're not a sweet berry. If you've ever had unsweetened cranberry juice, I'm sure that it's a very tart fruit. So having the cranberry juice in there, the cranberry juice cocktail, which has sugar added, and adding honey and marmalade will actually make this, it's a sweet sauce. I mean, it's a jelly, it's a jam, right? But it won't be too sweet, I promise. If you are watching your sugar though, you can probably find like a artificially sweetened, I don't know, cranberry juice and probably like some sort of artificial honey substitute, like a honey flavored artificial sweetener. And there are, unsweetened or artificially sweetened or fruit juice sweetened marmalades out there that you can use. But this is, literally a recipe that I've been doing since the late 80s, early 90s. So I am kind of sticking with the old school recipe and doing like full sugar. But also, you're not eating this by like a meal. This is a jam, this is a jelly, it's a spread, so you're not using gobs and gobs of it. Even though you may want to once you try this. Once the cranberries start popping, you can actually take your spatula and start mushing them down, which will help release the pectins and make this a thicker jelly. And like I said, this is going to take a minute, so we'll be back. We'll either fast forward this entire process or we'll come back when this is closer to ready. So this is starting to thicken up nicely, and it'll not only thicken up while I'm making this, but it'll also thicken up a lot once it cools. So, kind of like the reverse of what I just did with the honey. And once you mush up most of these cranberries, or as many cranberries as you can, it'll stop popping, obviously. So once we get to that point, then we're going to add our seasonings, which are these, like, amazing kind of fall pumpkin spicy type seasonings. And honestly, I have these like individually measured out, but you can actually combine these and just use pumpkin pie spice if that's what you have at home. So we're going to add, let me just make sure I have the correct measurements in my book. You've got 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. I usually use, like, these days I use like grated ginger, but in this recipe, because I'm, sticking to the old school, I'm using the powdered ground ginger that comes in a little can. I've got a half teaspoon of salt, because salt is always very good when you're making sweet recipes, and a half teaspoon of black pepper, 3 cloves, like the whole cloves, which they're gonna stay in the jelly. So somebody who's kind of pouring it out, they're gonna have to look out for it. Maybe you can turn it into a little treasure hunt. Whoever gets the clove in their jam wins something. I don't know. But yeah, chewing into that can be kind of woody. So, but 3 cloves and a eighth of a teaspoon, small amount of cayenne pepper. And you're going to go ahead and add all this into your mixture. And that's going to really warm up this cranberry sauce. That little bit of cayenne is really going to make a big difference in this sauce when you use it like in a sandwich or something. It's just so, you have this like little kind of peppery aftertaste, especially because it's also got the black pepper in there, that you're going to be like, ooh, little extra spice. If you don't have access to cayenne pepper in your kitchen, just use some hot sauce. It'll be a little bit different flavor profile, because hot sauces have vinegar and a couple of other ingredients depending on the brand. So, if you have cayenne pepper, I recommend that. But if you don't have that quickly available in your kitchen, you're just kind of making this and you never went to the supermarket right before you started making this, you can just add, like an 1/8 teaspoon to a 1/4 teaspoon of hot sauce. But yeah, you can tell they're starting to really thicken up in there. If you like chocolate with like that little chili aftertaste, like chocolate with chilies in it, this is going to have a very similar kind of heat to that. Then as it really thickens up, we're going to add our last ingredient, which is crushed walnuts. So when you go to the store, you can get walnut halves and pieces, and then you can also get like chopped walnuts. Chopped walnuts to me are still a little bit too big, so I usually just put this on like a cutting board and run through it with like a kitchen knife, just to make the pieces a little bit smaller. And that gets added to our sauce. And you may be wondering, what's this sugar doing here? The thing is, when you're making jams or jellies or sweet sauces like a cranberry sauce or any kind of fruit, depending on that year's yield, can be sweeter than usual, it can be more tart than usual. So it's usually a good idea just to keep a little bit of sugar on hand, and then you can do like a little taste test to see if you need to even add more sugar. I have not taste tested this batch at all, so I cannot tell you. if we're gonna need more sugar. But yeah, my recipe literally has written here, sugar to taste. So there's no measurement on that, and there never has been, because every year it's a little bit different. Now, when I say taste test, you don't want to taste test this right out of the pot. This is screaming hot. Kind of like you don't want hot honey to be, spat at you from a frying pan. Or kind of like hot liquid candy. Once it gets on your skin, that's a really, really bad burn. So when you do a taste test, you do want to kind of, let me see if I can actually get a little dish. Oh, I can use the dish I had the spices on. This is kind of a Japanese method of taste testing. We always have like a little dish standing by. And this is not a Japanese recipe, but most of my recipes are. So a little Japanese food culture tidbit is we have a tendency to just kind of transfer it over to a plate and then let that cool. And that way you don't have to have like 16 spoons. A lot of chefs keep spoons like there's like a pocket in their sleeve for spoons for tasting. But every time you use a spoon to taste, you got to throw it into the sink for washing so you don't contaminate your pot. So having a little plate like this is kind of enough. It's so good. I honestly don't think I need to add any more sugar. So I'm going to put that aside. Actually, I'm going to hide it behind the cranberry juice. I'm going to give this one more taste, just to double check, and also because I love it. Oh, it's so good. It's slightly tart. After it goes down your throat, you get this like warm feeling from like the cayenne and the ginger and the black pepper, and then obviously like the cinnamon and the nutmeg and the cloves in there. And then you've got all that there's that orange kind of flavor on the back, kind of like this is kind of like the jam version of a cranberry orange muffin. So yeah, with walnuts. Forgot about that. Okay, so this has gotten pretty thick. I'm going to let this cook for another 5 minutes or so just to really thicken up, and then I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to set this aside so it kind of cools completely. And once that's happened, I'll come back and I'll show you the most yummy way of having this separate from like a turkey sandwich or like having it as a side for a holiday dinner. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. So we're back from letting this cranberry sauce chill out. It took me about an hour, and a really rapid method of cooling down something that's hot, like a hot jelly or jam that you've just made, is to put it in a bowl and then put it on top of in a larger bowl with some ice water. And that'll kind of chill things pretty quickly without you having to put it in the fridge, and then that gets everything else in the fridge kind of warm. So yeah, so that took about an hour, just keeping it sitting on top of some ice water. And I was able to put some back in that marmalade jar, and also put it in this like really pretty crystal bowl. And just so you know, there's still plenty left. So you could definitely use this for all sorts of recipes, whether you want to put it in a sandwich, or like in my case, I'm making a little snack of some really, really good crusty French bread and some really, really good brie. You could also put this on top of ricotta, like a ricotta toast. Completely up to you. I like putting it on like a camembert or brie, something that's kind of like a good pungenty cheese, but not quite going into like blue cheese territory. So we put a little bit of this sauce. This kitchen smells amazing, by the way. It smells like somebody put one of those cranberry fall season um, uh, air freshener room, like scented warmers. It smells like that. It's a really good scent. So I'm gonna put a little bit here. Then I'm gonna rip this off. And then take a bite. Mm. It tastes like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Because I have it on top of the brie, I've got like the brie flavors in there too. But it's got, like the richness and the creaminess from the brie, but it's got this like sour, sweet, cranberry sauce goodness. Mm. This has literally been a hit, like I said, since college. And it's a tried and true recipe. It's so good. And actually, I'm gonna do that kind of indulgent thing where I just kind of take the center of the bread. Mm. Mm. It is so good. Yeah, like I said, I like the canned jelly stuff. Um, I but when I have the time to make this and I have some extra on hand, it's good. So, mm, mm. And this is probably actually good on blue cheese as well. Um, they do put like dry sweetened cranberries in salads with walnuts and or pecans and blue cheese chunks. So that would have like this very similar flavor profile to that. Even without the brie, mm, pair this with anything salty. So brie cheese, sliced turkey, sliced roast beef. Um, this would go amazingly well with any of those. Uh, Turkey burgers. So many options. I really hope you make this at home and give it a shot. Bring it to your next family gathering or a dinner party with your friends. I promise you they'll be impressed, and it was super simple to make. So you should give it a shot. I will see you next time on Nakatomi Text Kitchen. Bye!